Have you ever considered that the truly strong people aren't those who talk the loudest, but those who remain calm even when everything around them seems to be crumbling? Today you'll learn how to act as if nothing affects you, even when your inner world is as chaotic as a raging storm. Controlling your emotions isn't about putting on an act, but about revealing your true inner strength. Before we begin, I'd like to ask you to write in the comments what the phrase "not everything deserves a reaction" means to you. So, let's get started. 1. Understand that most other people's reactions are not directly related to you. One of the most liberating realizations in life is that what others do or say almost never has anything to do with you. We often believe that criticism, condemnation, rejection, or even the silence of others are signs that something is wrong with us or our actions. But in reality, every person carries stories within them that we cannot see, hidden problems and inner struggles that we cannot even imagine. What they show us is usually only the result of these conflicts, not our true nature. Everyone carries an invisible backpack on their back. Inside are old fears, unresolved worries, wounds that may never have healed, and dreams that have been shattered over the course of a lifetime. So, when someone overreacts with anger, coldness, or contempt, it almost never means that you've actually done anything wrong. Most of the time, this person is trapped in their own pain or insecurity and projects what they cannot internally process. Therefore, the attack, criticism, or indifference directed at you says nothing about who you are, but rather about the other person's emotional state. Understanding this is not only wise, but also a path to self-liberation. If someone ignores you, complains about you, or tries to make you feel inferior, pause for a moment and think, what if this has nothing to do with me? This changes the whole situation. You free yourself from guilt, the constant need to defend yourself, and resentment, and instead react much more calmly and clearly. This simple shift in perspective changes your inner feelings and protects you from carrying guilt or responsibilities that aren't actually yours. The ancient Stoic philosophers spoke very clearly about this. Epictetus taught that it's not the events themselves that hurt us, but rather how we interpret them. If you notice a negative attitude and immediately think it's your fault, you suffer twice over. First because of the other person's behavior, and then because of the story you create in your head to explain it. But if you realize that this story is usually just an assumption, you can choose not to get caught up in this additional suffering. This doesn't mean ignoring what's happening, but rather viewing the situation from a more detached and healthier perspective, without letting it rob you of your inner peace. An important part of this learning process is realizing that true control lies within yourself, not in others. You have no power over what others think, feel, or do, but you can decide what place those attitudes have within you. You can decide for yourself what you listen to, and what doesn't help you or prevent you from growing. Not every statement deserves to be treated as truth, and not every criticism justifies an emotional reaction. Learning to let go of the urge to please everyone is one of the most important skills you can develop. This doesn't mean accepting bad behavior or allowing yourself to be hurt indefinitely. Compassion is not the same as tolerating abuse. Understanding that someone is acting out of their own pain doesn't mean you have to tolerate it or remain in harmful situations. It simply means you can observe more clearly without absorbing the pain that the other person cannot bear. You can set clear boundaries by starting from a place of calm, not hurt feelings. When you stop reacting to every harsh word or cold gesture, something begins to grow within you. You discover that your identity no longer depends on the approval or disapproval of others. Your worth is rooted within yourself. It's as if an invisible shield of peace forms around you, and this shield isn't made of coldness, but of deep understanding and self-love. Over time, you feel emotionally lighter, not because other people have changed, but because you've learned not to carry around what isn't yours. And in this lightness grows a new way of interacting with the world. A freer, more authentic, and kinder one. You encounter people with more compassion and recognize that we all struggle internally, even if these struggles seem to hide behind anger or distance. Ultimately, the realization that the reactions of others almost never have anything to do with you personally bestows an invaluable gift: the freedom to be yourself without fear of judgment. This allows you to move more fluidly, trust your inner voice more, and align your life with your values, not the expectations of others. You learn to observe the world without trying to control it, and to connect with people without losing yourself. And above all, you develop an inner strength that accompanies you in every moment. Remember, even if you can't control everything in your life, you can always decide how you understand each situation and how you want to proceed. If this is your first time on my channel, I would be very happy if you subscribed and gave it a like. This allows me to continue producing content like this. 2. Develop the ability to be fully present in the here and now and not to be swept away by the stories your mind invents. The human mind possesses an incredible capacity for creating stories. Every event, every gesture, and every word we hear or speak becomes another part of the narrative we construct within ourselves. Yet this variability, which could bring clarity and creativity, often becomes a source of great suffering. Frequently, it is not the event itself that hurts, but the thoughts, judgments, and assumptions our minds form around it. A disapproving comment, a missed opportunity, a cold glance. None of these events alone has the power to destroy us. What hurts is the meaning we give them. I'm not good enough. I'll always make mistakes. Nobody likes me. Such thoughts transform something harmless into a wound that keeps reopening. If we fail to recognize this mechanism, we enter a cycle of negative thoughts that reinforce each other. The mind recalls past failures and imagines future problems, creating an ever-expanding web of fear, guilt, and discouragement. Every painful memory intensifies the fear of tomorrow, and every fear of tomorrow intensifies the pain of the past. Thus the mind, with its endless noise, keeps us trapped in a circle where the present disappears, shrouded by painful memories and anxieties about the future. The key to breaking this cycle lies not in fighting our thoughts or suppressing our feelings, but in observing them without believing we are identical to them. Observing without clinging means understanding that we are not our thoughts, just as the sky is not the clouds that pass through it. We are like the sky, immeasurable, calm, and capable of acknowledging any storm without losing our true selves. When we learn to observe the stories our minds create without being confused by them, we begin to discern the difference between our inner narrative and the reality of the moment. This creates a healthy space that allows us to breathe, make decisions calmly, and act with far greater clarity. Returning to the present moment again and again is like an exercise that gradually dissolves all the chaos the mind creates. The present is almost never as frightening as the mind makes it seem. When you stop living in the past, which is already behind you and can no longer be changed, or in the future, which isn't even here yet, you realize that life, in its simplicity, is usually much kinder than the story the mind invents. Calm and clarity are not secret powers of a select few. They arise quite naturally when you truly live in the present moment. Epictetus, one of the great Stoics, said that it is not things themselves that disturb people, but their opinions about them. This old lesson remains true, showing us that the outside world has little influence on our inner feelings. It's not the facts themselves that hurt or uplift us, but how we interpret them. Stoicism doesn't call for folding our arms, but for self-control. It's about learning to recognize what is within our control, our opinions, our actions, and what is left to the unpredictable course of life. Being in the here and now is not a rare gift. It's a skill that grows with practice, like a muscle getting stronger through repetition. Pausing for a few moments each day, taking a deep breath and repeating affirmations like, "I am here," or "This too shall pass," are small gestures that, if consistently applied, help the mind avoid getting so lost in its own thoughts. Every time you choose to return to the present moment, even if only for a moment, you are practicing living more consciously. A common mistake is believing everything we think, yet many thoughts are not eternal truths. Some are merely fleeting ideas born from old fears or current insecurities. When we learn to observe thoughts and ask, "Is this really true?" or "What else could this mean?" a space of freedom opens within us, where the mind ceases to control us and instead helps us shape our lives. Observing is not the same as reacting. Observing creates an inner space where wisdom can emerge, while reacting automatically propels us toward quick and exhausting actions. Not reacting does not mean suppressing feelings, but rather allowing them without letting them dictate our actions. When this gentle distance exists, feelings lose their destructive power and thoughts their insistent presence. Acting as if nothing bothers you is not a sign of coldness, nor is it a false facade to demonstrate strength. On the contrary, it is one of the greatest gestures of personal strength one can achieve. In a world where almost everyone seems to explode at the slightest provocation, composure becomes an art, a wisdom that propels us forward. Suppressing a spontaneous reaction is not a weakness. On the contrary, it is a clear demonstration of inner strength and self-control. Not reacting doesn't mean ignoring your feelings. It means perceiving your inner self without being guided by emotions. There will always be provocations, malicious remarks, criticism disguised as advice, contemptuous glances, whether direct or hidden. All of this is part of human interaction. The real challenge, however, lies not in the external influences, but in our reaction to them. Those who don't let themselves be swept away by every external stimulus discover an important secret. We are not puppets manipulated by our environment. We have the freedom to choose our stance and to preserve our inner peace like a precious fire in the midst of a storm. When we react impulsively, we give away something valuable, our energy. Every time we react with anger, fear, or worry, we allow others to control our attention. By remaining calm, we preserve our strength and clarity. This doesn't mean suppressing feelings. Bottling everything up only leads to them building up and later exploding. It means allowing our feelings without letting them drive us to actions we'll later regret. It's like watching a storm and remembering that you're not part of it. Pretending that nothing touches you isn't really hypocrisy or a mask. It's a conscious decision not to relinquish control of your own life to the fleeting emotions of others. This doesn't mean we don't feel the weight of a hurtful word or an unjust gesture. It simply means we've chosen not to let that weight define or sweep us away. It's about maintaining your inner balance, even when everything around you is falling apart. This way of life has ancient roots. The ancient Stoic thinkers like Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius said that we have no control over what happens, but we are responsible for our reaction to it. This seemingly simple yet profound idea bestows immense freedom. When you understand that you have control over your inner world, you are no longer a prisoner of external events. You no longer need someone else to change in order for you to find inner peace. And this peace becomes unbreakable. Serenity becomes like an invisible shield against all attempts to disturb or provoke you. With this serenity comes clarity. A peaceful mind not only resists external influences better, but also allows us to perceive everything more accurately. By not reacting immediately, we can act more wisely, make better decisions, and perceive situations as they truly are, not as our emotions make them appear. Not reacting automatically to everything that happens doesn't mean being passive, but rather reacting from a higher perspective. It means acting proactively instead of merely reacting. It's a kind of active wisdom, where every action is consciously chosen and not forced by events. Over time, this attitude becomes clear evidence of growth and maturity. The old emotional triggers that used to drive you into a rage lose their power. Insults bounce off you like water off a rock. Unfair criticism no longer hurts as it once did. This change is visible not only to ourselves, but also to those around us. When you live this way, something interesting happens. Take a deep breath. Calm spreads. At first, the lack of reaction might seem strange, but later others will feel respect. There is great strength in someone who doesn't need to shout or react aggressively to show resolve. This strength doesn't stem from muscles or a stern expression, but from inner power. It's important to manage anger and stress in a healthy way. Although anger and stress are often seen as enemies that should be eliminated, they are actually important messages about our inner selves. They don't seem to harm us, but rather warn us that something within us needs to be heard, understood, and changed. Ignoring or suppressing them is like ignoring an alarm. The danger doesn't simply disappear just because we refuse to listen. The more we try to ignore them, the more they build up in our bodies and minds, seeking an outlet, often in painful or destructive ways. Suppressing feelings like anger or stress is like carrying around heavy stones or constantly letting a fire burn in your chest. At first, it might seem possible to simply carry on without confronting it, as if nothing had happened. But over time, this burden affects everything. Our words become sharper, our patience dwindles, we sleep restlessly, and our relationships deteriorate. Or the opposite happens. We become so trapped inside ourselves that we seemingly feel nothing anymore. No joy, no longing, no connection. Suppressing feelings doesn't make them disappear. It only transforms them into a hidden burden that robs us of energy and our inner truth. Releasing anger or stress doesn't mean acting recklessly or losing control. It's not about yelling at someone in the street or destroying things. What's important is consciously directing our feelings and finding safe and healthy ways for this energy to flow and transform. Sometimes a walk, brisk exercise, or a few deep breaths are all it takes to release seemingly unbearable tension. Sometimes writing down our innermost feelings without censorship, without demonstrating strength, and without feeling obligated to show them to anyone, can bring us a clarity that previously seemed unattainable. Speaking too is an effective tool, not to blame or hurt, but to give form to what only causes pain when left silent. No one can take away our liberation from our feelings. No one can see inside us and resolve our emotions. Blaming the world, family, partner, or circumstances only intensifies suffering because it makes us believe that change lies outside of ourselves. When we take full responsibility for our feelings, we also gain the power to transform those emotions. We learn that feeling is part of being human, that emotions are not inherently bad, but that it is our responsibility to channel this energy in a way that does not harm ourselves or our loved ones. Stoicism, with its profound wisdom through Epictetus, reminds us that it is not external events that hurt us, but how we interpret them. An insult, a failed project, a disappointment or abandonment cannot destroy us on its own. What truly affects us is the story we create from these situations, the beliefs we cultivate within ourselves, and the meaning we ascribe to them. From this perspective, letting go of anger or stress is no longer an impulse, but a conscious process in which we observe our thoughts, understand them, and make wiser decisions about how to respond to life's challenges. Conscious expression changes the way feelings behave. When we speak honestly, write freely, and move mindfully, emotions lose the dark, frightening power we often fear. They begin to flow, to dissolve, and as they are released, something within us is also freed. We no longer carry a backpack full of stones. We no longer live in constant fear of an emotional outburst. We begin to believe in our ability to manage our feelings and emerge from them stronger and clearer. Regular practice is essential. It's not about only allowing yourself to feel emotions or alleviate inner burdens when you're on the verge of collapse. Letting go of emotions should become part of daily self-care, like eating or resting. Every small moment we perceive our feelings, every instant we move our body, every deep breath, every time we write down what hurts us, is a step towards a lighter, more conscious and freer life. It is essential to consciously choose to whom we give our attention. Attention is one of our most valuable assets, even though we almost never treat it as such. In a world full of stimuli, requests, calls, and voices vying for attention, our attention becomes a scarce commodity that must be cultivated consciously and responsibly. Every time we decide to whom we dedicate our time and energy, we choose the kind of life we want to create. That is why it is so important to carefully select the people we allow into our thoughts, our hearts, and our souls. Paying attention to those who don't respect us might seem kind at first, but on closer inspection, it's often a neglect of ourselves. It's not about judging anyone, but about understanding that our energy is limited. We mustn't waste it on those who use it recklessly and without giving anything in return. Every conversation that exhausts us, every encounter that brings more doubt than peace, every presence that burdens us instead of soothing us, is a reminder of how important it is to pay attention to our emotional well-being and to care for ourselves mindfully. Sometimes, out of habit, fear of being alone, or a desire to avoid conflict, we cling to people who haven't been good for us for a long time. People who may once have been important, but now only burden and exhaust us. We tell ourselves it's not so bad, that we can handle it, but over time, these little energy vampires grow into a vast ocean of exhaustion. Setting boundaries isn't selfish. It demonstrates self-love and respect for the life we want to build. We aren't obligated to put up with what drains us. We owe those who don't contribute to our inner peace neither explanations nor constant presence. Observing how we feel after a period of time with someone can be one of the most insightful exercises of all. There are people who enlighten us, uplift us, and motivate us to become the best version of ourselves. Such encounters leave a warm feeling in our hearts, nourish our souls, and remind us of what we are capable of achieving. And then there are those people who, even without arguments or disagreements, leave us feeling more lost, exhausted, and insecure. Our intuition almost never fails us in such situations. If we look closely, we can clearly see who enriches our lives and who hinders them. Epictetus, the wise Stoic philosopher, warned us about external influences that we should approach with caution. For the Stoics, everything around us can influence our thinking and thus shape our character. We are not entirely defenseless against our environment. If we surround ourselves with people of strong character, discipline, and intelligence, we naturally develop these qualities ourselves. However, if we allow laziness, despondency, or contempt into our inner circle, we will inevitably suffer their consequences. Therefore, choosing our closest confidants is an act of great responsibility for our personal development. Decisions about who stays and who goes should not be rushed or driven by spontaneous emotions. Acting consciously means acting calmly, thoughtfully, and in accordance with our values and life goals. It's not about abandoning someone because of minor differences or problems. It's about perceiving and understanding the energy that a relationship as a whole brings. And when we realize that someone no longer fits into our shared path, we must act respectfully, but also firmly. Our well-being must not be compromised by guilt or the fear of disappointing others. Viewing pain as something temporary is crucial, especially in the most difficult moments. When pain seems to completely overwhelm us, it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking it will never end. Suffering, however intense, can distort our perception of time, making a minute seem like an eternity. But one of the most liberating truths is that pain is not permanent. Everything passes, everything changes. Even if the burden seems crushing right now, life, which is constantly in motion, doesn't allow anything to stand still forever, not even our deepest wounds. Pain changes in its very nature. Initially, it can strike us with the force of a storm, plunging us into a maelstrom of emotions from which there seems to be no escape. But with time, this force subsides, making way for moments of calm, for gentler breaths, and for thoughts that no longer revolve solely around the same pain. This change doesn't happen because we ignore our feelings, but because time quietly and subtly orders our emotions and teaches our hearts new ways to process what we have experienced. How we understand pain significantly influences how it manifests. The belief that grief, loss, or disappointment lasts forever plunges us into despair, robs us of our strength, and clouds our view of the future. But the realization that pain is a phase, a stage on our life's journey, ignites the power of our resilience. It reminds us that we can persevere, change, and find glimmers of light even in the darkest days. Resilience doesn't mean pretending nothing hurts, but rather continuing on with pain by our side, knowing that it will be stronger today, weaker tomorrow, and one day just a distant memory. It is this quiet strength that drives us on, even when we are exhausted. It is the gentle voice that tells us that life, even amidst tears, still has meaning. Resilience grows from the understanding that we are stronger than what we experience, that within us there exists a space that no pain can destroy. Along this path, it is essential to remember that we are not the pain itself, not the sadness itself, not the fear, and not the anguish. We are the ones who feel these emotions, who live through them. This distinction is of great importance because when we stop confusing ourselves with suffering, we gain a new perspective. We begin to see pain as a temporary guest, not as something that defines us. So instead of clinging to suffering, we learn to stand with it without letting it control us. The Stoics, who always attentively observed human behavior, understood this profoundly. Marcus Aurelius wrote that everything we see is transient. This truth applies not only to pleasures, but also to suffering. The awareness of life's transience liberates us. It allows us to feel without fear of being trapped in it forever. It teaches us to understand life as a never-ending river, in which every emotion has its time and space, but none lasts forever. Even pain, however intense, has its purpose. It is not the end of the journey, but a part of it. It is a support, sometimes unpleasant, but one that contributes to growth. Fighting pain only prolongs it. Accepting it, observing it, and learning from it helps us move forward. Like a river that must flow, our emotions also need space. When we let them flow without fighting against them, we also allow healing to occur. Every day is a new opportunity. Every day dawns like a fresh start, an unburdened chance to look ahead, untroubled by past mistakes or the shadows of what could have been. Often we remain stuck in the past, clinging to unchangeable regrets or fearing an uncertain future. But the present, this brief moment we are breathing now, is an immeasurable and fragile gift. The value of the present lies precisely in its fleeting nature. It cannot be stopped or brought back. It can only be lived. And by consciously experiencing this moment, we find the key to our own transformation. Imagine each morning as a blank sheet of paper. No matter how crumpled yesterday's pages were, the new day appears before you as a brand new promise, calm and full of possibilities. You can fill it with courage, affection, and determination. Or you can leave it empty, surrendering it to habit and discouragement. It's important to remember that while you can't erase the past, you have complete control over what you do today. Every conscious decision, every small act of improvement, becomes a new word in the story you write about yourself. Life isn't just about mindlessly reacting to what happens, like leaves in the wind. Life is about responding consciously. Instead of letting ourselves be guided by impulses or fleeting feelings, we are called upon to pause, take a deep breath, and decide. Reacting happens automatically. Conscious action means thinking ahead. We can't control everything that happens to us, but we can control how we deal with it. And it is precisely in these daily decisions, which we sometimes don't even notice, that our true freedom lies. The challenges, the unexpected events, the sad days, all of this is part of the journey. They are not blows of fate, nor are they signs of failure. They are the stones that strengthen our resilience. Every time we choose to adapt instead of giving up, we become stronger. Every step we take, even through pain or exhaustion, shows that we remain true to life. Resilience doesn't mean being hard as stone or pretending we're immune to pain. It means being able to bend without breaking and continue to grow, even when everything around us is difficult. Emperor Marcus Aurelius understood this well and began each day by preparing for problems, difficult people, disappointments, and surprises. He did this not with anger, but with serenity. He didn't expect a perfect life. He knew that imperfection is part of life. Preparing doesn't mean becoming bitter, but rather strong and realistic. It means bravely accepting life's challenges, knowing that while not everything depends on us, our response to them is always within our control. Accepting that every day has its flaws is also an act of self-love. Not every day will be perfect. Sometimes we barely manage to get through it. On other days, we stumble, trip over our own goals, and feel inadequate. Yet, each of these days has its value. They all belong to our life story. Learning to accept our weaknesses, to acknowledge our failures without being hard on ourselves, is just as important as the desire for personal growth. Personal growth doesn't happen through grand gestures or drastic overnight changes. It happens in small ways in everyday life, in the small steps that, if we maintain them long-term, bring us closer to the person we want to be. Getting up a little earlier, speaking more kindly, trying to stay positive when things go wrong, forgiving ourselves when we fail. It's these simple actions, repeated day after day, that truly transform a person. There are no shortcuts. There is only determination, humility, and consistent action. Have you ever felt so overwhelmed that the slightest thing could trigger a meltdown? Those days when every noise is irritating, conversations are difficult, and every little problem becomes a mental storm. We all know that feeling. And the worst part is, when we lose control, we say or do things that later weigh us down like a backpack full of stones. But before you blame yourself, pause for a moment. Take a deep breath. All is not lost. Instead of getting lost in this mental chaos, there's a simple trick to regain control. It's all about conscious breathing. You don't need incense, complicated positions, or repeated phrases in another language, unless you enjoy that sort of thing. Simply inhale deeply for a few seconds, hold your breath, and exhale slowly. Sounds too simple to work, right? But it does. Think of it like a reset button in your mind. When you focus on your breathing, you give your brain a break and prevent impulsive actions. It's like closing all the unnecessary tabs on your computer and suddenly it's running smoothly again. Your mind works the same way. It just needs a moment to clear up and feel in control again. So if you're about to lose it, do the simplest thing. Breathe. It's that simple. It might sound strange, but when emotions overwhelm us, the first thing we often forget is to breathe, as if the air is slipping from our chest. A few deep breaths, focusing solely on inhaling and exhaling, can provide temporary relief for both body and mind. Imagine your mind like a computer with many tabs open at once. Taking a deep breath is like a reboot. Everything shuts down for a moment, only to then function more clearly again. And when I talk about deep breathing, I'm certainly not referring to that quick gasp we take when someone tells us, "Take a deep breath." That's not it. I mean inhaling until your abdomen noticeably expands. Sometimes, simply feeling the breeze through your body can help realign your energy. The mind loses focus when overloaded, and mindfulness helps to regain it, much like adjusting your phone's camera until it captures the desired subject. The ancient Stoics also taught something useful. Try to separate your feelings from the present moment. This means that even if anger strikes you like lightning, the key is to observe it without letting it overwhelm you, like watching a film without getting swept up in the drama. The better you can distance yourself from the impulse to react immediately, the easier it becomes to calm down. Because when you let yourself be swept away by emotions, you often overreact. Mindfulness exercises help you reduce this habit of reacting too quickly. This means that if someone annoys you, you don't jump up immediately, but use the brief pause to react thoughtfully instead of acting automatically. Sometimes a small change in how you handle your emotions is all it takes to prevent an argument. Over time, you'll be surprised how many situations you can manage without losing your composure. Serenity is attainable, and you don't have to become a monk or a sage to control your emotions. What you need is practice, even if it's just for a few minutes a day. This means you'll be more present in difficult moments and less likely to lose control. Ultimately, life isn't about running away from difficult moments, but about how you deal with them. And sometimes staying calm isn't just good advice, it's essential. As a wise Stoic said, if you can't control what's happening around you, take care of what's happening inside you. Viktor Frankl in his book, Humanity's Search for Meaning, he left us one of the most important lessons about inner freedom. Between what happens and what we do afterward lies a space. In this space lies our capacity for decision-making. Here, our true freedom originates. In a world full of fast and impulsive reactions, the secret lies in expanding this space in order to remain calm and act wisely rather than impulsively. This space isn't just a nice idea, but something we can practice daily. Interestingly, one of the first steps to expanding it is to focus our attention on something very simple: breathing. The connection between breathing and the nervous system is obvious. When we breathe quickly and shallowly, we activate the part of the body that puts us on high alert, as if we were ready to fight or flee. When we breathe slowly and deeply, we activate the system that brings us calm and clears the mind. Every time we consciously inhale, we create a brief moment of stillness, a chance not to be swept away by the emotional storm. To control our reactions, we must first learn to recognize the signs that signal we are in danger of losing control. The body speaks: tense muscles, racing heart, rising heat, a queasy feeling in the stomach. The mind also warns us: racing thoughts, a feeling of urgency, the almost automatic urge to react immediately. This is precisely where mindfulness makes the crucial difference. When we notice these signs, we can pause, take a breath, and observe instead of acting impulsively. This is precisely where the well-known 6-second rule comes into play. Studies in emotional neuroscience show that a very strong emotion, unless amplified by further thoughts, lasts about 6 seconds. 6 seconds that can determine whether we lash out or react calmly. Taking a deep breath and waiting this short time can reduce the intensity of the emotion and give us the opportunity to consciously decide how we want to act. Our body, along with our breathing, significantly influences our emotional balance. Our posture reflects our inner state and can simultaneously alter it. A hunched and stiff posture increases stress. An open, upright, and relaxed posture, on the other hand, signals calm and serenity. Consciously correcting one's posture may seem insignificant, but it is a powerful tool for influencing our well-being. Another tool to increase the distance between an event and your reaction is the idea of an emotional anchor. This means associating a small physical gesture with a feeling of peace. This could be pressing two fingers together, gently squeezing your hand, or any other simple movement that evokes a calm moment. With a little practice, this anchor becomes a quick way to regain composure in tense situations. Besides physical and mental techniques, writing is also an effective way to process emotions and better understand your own reactions. A notebook in which we record our outbursts of anger, our reactions and possible suggestions for improvement provides clarity and helps us to react more wisely in the future. Visualization is another tool that helps us plan our behavior in difficult situations. Simply imagining a safe place or thinking of a particularly calm version of ourselves can be enough to avoid overreacting. Our brains don't completely separate imagination and reality, so when we visualize calmness, it becomes easier to find it in everyday life. According to Stoic belief, the practice of memento moriet helps to lessen the weight of seemingly overwhelming situations. Questions like, will this still matter in 5 years? Or if today were my last day, would I really be wasting my time on this? Distract us from the drama of the moment and allow us to view everything from a broader and more logical perspective. And finally, our inner voice directly influences our feelings. Instead of saying, this is unbearable, we can say, this is difficult, but I can do it. The words we choose have the power to amplify or diminish the intensity of our emotions. An inner dialogue that radiates strength and self-control helps us to react more calmly. Increasing the distance between what happens and our reaction to it doesn't happen overnight, but with practice, it becomes a life-changing skill. It gives us back our power, allows us to respond consciously instead of just reacting, and lets us live more peacefully and consciously. This distance is our freedom, and within this distance, we decide who we want to be in every moment. 9th, setting boundaries. We live in a time when everyone is in a hurry, where the expectations of others weigh on our shoulders as if they were our own obligations, where we learn to smile even when we would rather scream inside. Amidst all this, something has become almost rare: self-respect. But let's be honest, since when has self-care been a luxury? Since when have you been convinced that your well-being should always come last? Herein lies the real problem, the fear of disappointing others. That quiet fear that makes you say yes even though everything inside you is screaming no. It's an automatic reaction, a reaction that arose to avoid conflict, to not bother others, to continue being the nice person. And so you take on commitments you don't want, do favors you can't, and attend meetings you'd rather avoid. Until one day, all this burden transforms into exhaustion, into pent-up anger, into the feeling that something inside you is breaking. But listen carefully. Your time, your energy, and your inner peace are not commodities that can be traded. You are not here to solve other people's problems or carry burdens that aren't yours. Saying no doesn't make you selfish. It shows that you know your limits, and the best part is, you don't have to justify your no with long speeches. A no is enough. No need to sugarcoat it or make excuses. If someone gets angry because you thought of yourself, that person was probably more interested in what they could get from you than in you as a person. So start choosing yourself, not out of guilt, but with the certainty that no one else will do it for you. To stop feeling bad and holding grudges, you need to learn to say no without fear. Think of it like a muscle that needs training. At first, you'll hesitate, like a child afraid to put their foot in cold water. But over time, you'll realize the water wasn't so cold after all. Does this sound familiar? Of course. The Stoics, with their straightforward way of life, already taught us something important. You can't control what others do or ask, but you can control how you react. When you say no, you don't need to come up with a long list of reasons. You don't have to explain everything as if you were giving a presentation. Just say what needs to be said, simply and firmly. If someone asks you to do something you can't or don't want to do, just say, "No, I can't," and that's it. The silence afterward might feel awkward, I know, but it will bring a sense of relief. If you want to phrase it a little more kindly, you can say, "I can't right now," or "I can't do that at the moment," but without making excuses. There's no need to beat around the bush. Saying no doesn't hurt you. It just shows that you're human and value your peace and your time. So remember this: The next time someone asks you to do something you don't want to do or that would harm you, say no. There's no reason to feel guilty about protecting yourself. Don't let others steal your peace as if it were your duty. As the Stoic sage Seneca said, peace doesn't mean having no problems. Peace means being able to say no without fear. And remember, you're not in this world to save everyone, but to take care of yourself. Don't make your life a place of inner conflict, because your peace is not for sale. Listen carefully, my friend. Your inner peace belongs to you, and no one has the right to take it away. The price of not setting boundaries is high, and many pay it without realizing it, until exhaustion, irritability, and inner emptiness take over. Saying yes when we actually want to say no becomes an automatic habit that erases us and destroys our well-being. Emotional exhaustion arises when we live only to please others. Emotional exhaustion arises because we allow ourselves to be trapped by the expectations of others, always being helpful, always ready to give our time, our energy, and even what we lack. But at what cost? Without realizing it, we become tired versions of ourselves, drained by a life that isn't entirely our own. Every time we neglect our needs, guilt builds within us, growing and transforming into resentment. We feel exploited, yet remain trapped in the same cycle for fear of disappointing those who ask for our help. There is a hidden danger in viewing personal sacrifice as normal, as if it were an act of kindness. We were taught that being a good person means always giving in, donating, and putting others before ourselves. But this misguided notion of generosity leaves us with a feeling of emptiness and being overlooked. Kindness doesn't mean giving up on yourself. Having compassion for others doesn't mean being cruel to ourselves. We seek the approval of others as if it were the only way to feel valuable. We say yes, hoping to experience more love, more meaning, more acceptance. But in reality, those who only appear when they need something don't care about our well-being. The trap of always being the good guy forces us to play a role in which our own needs have no place. And when we finally want to break free from this role, we encounter the resentment of those who have grown accustomed to profiting from our weakness. Setting boundaries doesn't mean pushing others away, but rather putting ourselves first. Saying no isn't selfish. It means understanding that our energy and well-being are also important. Yet we often feel guilty when we put ourselves first, as if it were wrong to care for ourselves. But what good is it to dedicate ourselves to others if we neglect ourselves? The Stoics knew that true control lies in our own decisions, not in the opinions of others. Marcus Aurelius put it clearly: you have power over your mind, not over what happens around you. Understand this and you will find strength. We cannot force anyone to respect our boundaries, but we can learn to respect them. Seneca taught that true peace arises within us, from a mind that does not seek approval. Epictetus said we cannot control what others think of us, but we can decide how we respond to their expectations. Saying no is like a muscle. We have to train it until it becomes a habit. Starting with small situations helps develop this habit without overwhelming us. Simple and decisive statements without 1,000 explanations demonstrate self-confidence and avoid long, unproductive conversations. Feelings of anxiety can arise afterward, and that's normal, but over time we learn to manage them without feeling guilty. When we set boundaries, the reactions of others say a lot about the nature of our relationship. Those who have benefited from our vulnerability might react with anger or frustration, or even try to manipulate us into giving in again. But the people who truly value us will understand and respect our decision. We are not losing important people. We are choosing authentic relationships and creating space for those who truly enrich us, not for those who take something away. Silence after a no is a very powerful tool. Resisting the urge to fill that silence with meaningless explanations helps us stand by our decision. Accepting an uncomfortable moment without trying to sugarcoat it frees us from the pressure of having to justify everything we do. Allowing the other person to react as they wish, without feeling the need to control their reaction, is a sign of emotional maturity. Setting boundaries takes courage, but it is the only way to reclaim our freedom. It's not about closing your heart or being cold, but about learning to protect your feelings without guilt. Life shouldn't be a list of hidden sacrifices made just to gain recognition. Learning to say no is the first step to finally saying yes to a life that truly belongs to us. December. Find peace even amidst chaos. We live in a world that moves relentlessly forward. Nothing is absolutely certain. People change their minds without warning, and situations arise without our consent. Sometimes it seems as if everything is there to test us. A difficult conversation, a plan that falls apart at the last minute, the feeling that nothing is going as planned. But the truth is simple. Life owes us nothing. It neither works for us nor against us. It simply happens. Understanding this is the beginning of a more peaceful life. One of the greatest illusions of the mind is the belief that the world must function according to our expectations. We believe everything should be fairer. Every effort should be rewarded. Life should treat us with the same care we give it. But the universe doesn't follow our rules. It doesn't have to explain its reasons to us or prevent our mistakes. The sooner we understand this, the less we will suffer. Accepting this truth doesn't mean giving up or losing the will to improve. It means recognizing that we can't control everything, and that our inner peace doesn't depend on external circumstances, but on how we react to them. When we stop expecting special treatment from the world, we free ourselves from a major source of frustration and gain inner strength. The environment won't always be friendly. There will be criticism, arguments, noise, and disorder. But true peace isn't found in a place without problems. It arises from the ability to remain calm despite these problems. Maintaining composure in difficult times requires a mind that doesn't react impulsively. It's about observing what's happening without letting it get to us. We can't always change what's going on around us, but we can choose whether or not to let it hurt us. The key is to create some distance between ourselves and the difficulty. If someone is yelling at us or provoking us, we can choose not to play along. When stress threatens to overwhelm us, we can take a deep breath and remind ourselves that everything passes. Serenity arises when we consciously choose not to be swept away by the emotional turmoil of others. Much suffering stems from being too stubborn, wanting everything a certain way, resisting change, and clinging to ideas that no longer serve us. But life is vibrant and constantly changing. If we want to find peace amidst the chaos, we must learn to keep pace with this movement. A flexible mind helps us change without losing our inner balance. It allows us to see opportunities where others only see problems. It frees us from the frustration that arises when we try to control the uncontrollable. When we adopt a more light-hearted and open way of thinking, we stop fighting against reality and start working with it. It's not about surrendering to every situation, but about adjusting our perspective on the world and seeking new paths when things don't go as planned. The more we accept and adapt to change, the less pain we experience. Irritability almost always stems from an overloaded mind. We worry about too many things at once, take everything personally, harbor resentment, and develop expectations that will never be met. Emotional minimalism doesn't mean being cold or distant, but rather letting go of what we no longer need to feel. It's about releasing emotions that don't serve us, no longer engaging in battles that don't concern us, and no longer worrying about opinions we can't influence. When we lessen the burden of so many worries and stories that only tire us out, we feel lighter. Our irritability decreases because we no longer waste our energy on trivial matters. We focus only on what's essential and stop overreacting unnecessarily. The feelings of others can affect us like a virus. When we spend time with people who constantly complain, pick fights, or view the world with sadness, we easily absorb it unconsciously. Distancing ourselves from the negativity of others doesn't mean cutting off contact with difficult people, but rather learning not to let it invade our thoughts. The key lies in building an inner shield that protects us from pessimism and anger. We achieve this by recognizing that other people's feelings are their business, not ours. If someone is angry or wants to start an argument, we can choose not to engage. If the atmosphere is oppressive, we can create inner distance and focus our attention on more positive thoughts. Inner peace doesn't mean running away from negative energy, but learning to live with it without losing balance. Resistance means facing what has happened. It means not accepting that some things are beyond our control, not getting upset because of traffic jams, someone has disappointed us, or life isn't going our way. Acceptance, on the other hand, means seeing reality as it is. and acting from that perspective instead of fighting against it. It's not about submitting to injustice or pain, but rather about no longer wasting energy fighting against the unchangeable. When we fight against reality, suffering increases. When we accept it, we gain freedom. This doesn't mean giving up on efforts to improve things, but rather learning to distinguish between what we can influence and what is beyond our control. Acceptance is not the same as surrender. It means acknowledging what is without letting it rob us of our inner peace. Serenity is not a state we achieve once and for all. It is a daily practice. Inner peace requires practice. It means being aware of our reactions, recognizing when something external disturbs our peace, and remembering that we always have the choice to remain calm. Over time, serenity becomes our natural response to challenges. We no longer fly into a rage over every little thing. We no longer let negative feelings overwhelm us. We learn to manage our emotions. The secret lies in constantly remembering that peace is not something outside of ourselves. It doesn't depend on whether the world or people change. Peace is a choice, and when we learn to choose it again and again, no matter what happens, we discover true freedom. 11. It really affects us. Have you ever found yourself replaying a conversation in your head, analyzing every word like a puzzle? Perhaps someone said something insignificant unintentionally, and then you wonder, should I have gotten upset? If this has ever happened to you, don't worry. You're not alone. Sometimes a storm of trivialities erupts within us. Every gesture, every utterance suddenly seems far more significant than it actually was. It's as if we're carrying a heavy backpack full of stones, one that no one assigned us, but which we, for some reason, refuse to let go of. Our mind, which wants to protect us, ultimately deceives us. A careless remark becomes an insult, a fleeting glance, a rejection, and suddenly we find ourselves in an imaginary movie where everything is worse than it seems. And the strangest thing is, while we're racking our brains over it, the other person goes about their daily life as if nothing had happened. The crucial question is, how can we shed this burden? How can we stop exaggerating everything? The answer lies not in changing others, but in changing our perspective. Because ultimately, the problem often lies not in what was said, but in how we interpret it. Stoic philosophy, which constantly reminds us that we can only truly control our reactions, has much to teach us. If someone criticizes you or makes an inappropriate remark, it will only affect you if you allow it to. Yes, it's up to you. If you decide it won't spoil your day or your peace, then let it go. If you don't do this, you're wasting energy on something that doesn't deserve so much attention. But of course it's not easy. Nobody said it's easy to stop taking everything so seriously. It often requires constant effort, but fortunately, there are ways to train your mind to avoid this trap. The next time someone annoys you, pause, take a deep breath, and ask yourself, is this really important? If the answer is no, practice letting go. It's like chess. If you get hung up on a small, insignificant move, you'll end up losing the whole game. But if you learn to let go of that move and move on, you'll progress. A very effective way to deal with certain situations is to look at them from a different perspective. Did something upset you because someone made a remark? Try to imagine how that same remark might be pointing out something you can improve. Perhaps the person didn't mean to hurt you, but if they did, there might be something you can change. Stopping seeing everything as a direct attack is a big step toward a more relaxed and serene life. Ultimately, there's hardly anything more liberating than learning to let go of the little grievances that weigh us down daily. Don't live as if every word is a battle you have to win. There's no reason to take everything so seriously. If someone bothers you, remember that they only have the right to disturb your peace if you allow it. And if you find that hard to remember, think, the only thing I can control is how I react. So instead of wasting your time worrying about what others think or say, use that time for something that truly moves you forward. As an old Stoic teaching states, the ability to remain unhurt begins with the realization that nothing others do or say can rob us of our inner peace unless we relinquish that power. Our brains, shaped by millions of years of evolution, are programmed to pay more attention to the bad than the good. This mode of functioning, which ensured our survival in dangerous situations in the past, now has a detrimental effect on us in the modern world. We pay more attention to criticism than to praise. We cling to our mistakes, neglect our successes, and overreact to trivialities. This tendency makes us see danger where none exists and creates unnecessary anxiety and tension. Imagine a conversation with a colleague. If they react quickly and without smiling, your brain might interpret this as a lack of empathy or even anger, when in reality the person could simply be tired, busy, or lost in thought. In friendships and personal relationships too, we tend to develop negative scenarios when someone takes longer to reply to a message, even though the explanation might simply be a lack of time. This way of thinking not only robs us of our inner peace, but also clouds our perception of the world and leads us to imagine a problem that doesn't exist. Indifference is not the same as running away from what bothers us. Ignoring something doesn't make it disappear. However, choosing not to react to certain things can be an act of courage and determination. Deliberate indifference helps us maintain our emotional balance and avoid wasting energy on things we can't change or that aren't worth our attention. On social media, for example, negative comments are very common. Many people fall into the trap of reacting to everything, thus sparking pointless arguments. Learning to let certain provocations go unchallenged demonstrates self-control and maturity. In some situations, such as a pointless debate with someone who only wants to impose their point of view, silence is the best response. However, there are times when a response is important. If criticism offers something useful, or if silence might give the impression of agreeing with something wrong, it's worthwhile to speak up. The art lies in recognizing when a response moves the discussion forward and when it merely prolongs a pointless argument. The habit of constantly rehashing negative thoughts can be very exhausting. One way to break this cycle is through mindfulness. Focus on the here and now, instead of getting lost in negative, often unfounded ideas. A simple exercise is the box technique. When a persistent thought arises, imagine putting it in a box, closing the lid, and visualizing the box being put away or moving far away from you. This helps create distance from the distressing feeling without suppressing it. Another helpful tool is journaling. Writing down our feelings helps us organize our thoughts, view them more clearly, and release the associated emotional burden. Often, upon later reading, we find that the problem was much smaller than it initially seemed. Not all criticism is bad. On the contrary, a well-intentioned comment is one of the best ways to grow. The secret lies in recognizing the difference between a helpful and a demeaning comment. Constructive criticism almost always includes suggestions for improvement and is phrased politely. Malicious criticism, on the other hand, is usually confusing, hurtful, and pointless. Those who listen attentively to criticism without reacting emotionally can learn from it instead of interpreting it as a personal attack. When criticism hurts us, we should ask ourselves, does it come from someone whose judgment I truly trust? Does this criticism provide me with helpful information for improvement? If the answer is no, it's best to let it rest. If it's yes, we can use the criticism as an opportunity for growth instead of seeing it as a cause for suffering. The concept of anti-fragility, developed by Nassim Taleb, describes the ability to grow from difficulties rather than simply enduring them. In everyday life, this means that we can use criticism and negative comments as opportunities to strengthen our courage and emotional resilience. Instead of interpreting every negative word as an attack, we can view it as mental training. If we are unfairly accused of something, instead of arguing or getting angry, we can use the situation to practice our ability to remain calm under pressure. If the criticism is justified, we can see it as a learning opportunity. Helpful exercise is to gradually expose ourselves to situations where criticism is to be expected. This makes us less sensitive and creates a stronger inner defense, making us less susceptible to the opinions of others. The ego makes us perceive every remark as a direct attack. We take criticism too seriously because we see it as a threat to our self-image. But the Stoics taught that we must separate our identity from what others say about us. Reducing the importance the ego attaches to our emotions means remembering that the opinions of others do not determine our worth. A harsh remark doesn't diminish our value, any more than praise makes us more important. What's crucial is developing an inner self-image based on our beliefs about ourselves, not on the approval of others. It also helps to be aware that the opinions of others are constantly changing. What seems like a serious attack today may be irrelevant in a few days. Ultimately, almost everyone is so preoccupied with their own problems that they rarely think about us the way we imagine. The desire for acceptance makes us more sensitive to what others say. We worry too much about opinions that are often fleeting and irrelevant. One way to distance yourself from the opinions of others is to ask yourself, will this still matter in 5 years? Most of the time, the answer is no. It's also good to surround yourself with people who like you for who you truly are, and not for how you try to please them. Ultimately, the realization that other people's views are constantly changing gives us freedom. Today, we might be criticized, tomorrow praised, and the day after completely forgotten. What truly matters is our inner peace and our commitment to what we believe is right. Controlling our own reactions is essential. Developing patience in such a fast-paced world is one of the most difficult, yet also one of the most important skills one can acquire. In an age where haste is seen as a sign of focus and swift action as a sign of efficiency, pausing to breathe and choose our response, rather than reacting impulsively, becomes an act of true self-mastery. This doesn't mean passively accepting everything or allowing ourselves to be taken advantage of, but rather learning to act consciously in every situation without being driven by haste or the frustration of the moment. The first step toward this change is recognizing when we become impatient. Restless hands, a racing heart, the urge to interrupt someone mid-sentence or react rashly. All these are signs that our minds are pushing us toward hasty action without allowing us time to reflect. But what actually creates impatience? Often it's not the waiting itself, but the story we create about it. We think we're wasting time, believe someone is disrespecting us because they're taking too long, or we become restless because we can't control everything. Being patient doesn't mean remaining inactive, but rather recognizing the best time to act. It means understanding that not everything requires an immediate response, and that true strength in many situations lies in being able to wait. When we learn to recognize and manage impatience, we reduce stress and appear more composed and self-assured. Composure is not a sign of inactivity, but the result of a mind that has learned to act wisely in a fast-paced world. This is where pausing comes in. Taking a moment to pause before reacting is not a sign of weakness. On the contrary, it demonstrates self-control. The pause is the moment when we can see things more clearly, when we give ourselves the chance to choose the best path instead of being guided by impulses. In this brief moment, we decide the course of events. A carelessly spoken word can ignite conflict, while a moment of reflection can prevent it. Taking a deep breath, feeling the flow of air, brings us back to the present and distances us from emotional turmoil. Stoicism teaches that true strength lies not in dominating others, but in self-control. Marcus Aurelius said that the soul takes on the color of our thoughts, meaning that every impulsive reaction reinforces a habit that binds us to suffering. Every time we choose calm over impulse, we strengthen our ability to remain composed even in difficult situations. But this doesn't happen automatically, nor through willpower alone. Emotional stability is like a muscle that grows through training, and challenges are the weights that strengthen it. Every difficult moment offers an opportunity to practice composure. The difference between someone who reacts impulsively and someone who controls their emotions lies in how each individual perceives the situation. Impulsivity drives us to defend ourselves, react quickly, and be right. A trained mind, on the other hand, understands that most provocations are not worth the effort, and that true strength lies in ignoring what is not worth our energy. Self-control doesn't mean suppressing our feelings, but learning to use them more consciously. It doesn't mean we'll never feel anger or resentment, but rather that these feelings won't control us. In Stoic philosophy, moderation is one of the most important virtues, because without it, the others lose their significance. Wisdom without equanimity becomes arrogance. Justice without mindfulness becomes revenge. Courage without reason becomes pure risk. Therefore, acting consciously rather than impulsively is essential for a freer life. Knowing whether to react or act consciously is fundamental on this path. Reacting is quick, automatic, and driven by the immediate emotion. Conscious action, on the other hand, is the result of reflection. Conscious action means thinking and consciously deciding which stance we want to adopt. It means asking ourselves, does this anger help me or does it only harm me? Do I want to allow this feeling to dominate my day? Those who react allow themselves to be controlled by external circumstances. Those who act consciously demonstrate self-control. To cultivate patience and self-control, it's important to accept that we don't control the world, but we do control how we interpret our experiences. People behave unexpectedly. Unforeseen events occur and life throws us curveballs. Those who expect everything to go according to plan will suffer endlessly. But those who understand that chaos is part of life, that the opinions of others reveal more about them than about us, and that discomfort can be a training ground for self-control, will find an opportunity for growth in every challenge. Ultimately, dealing with our reactions isn't about suppressing feelings, but about freeing ourselves from them. It's about bringing more clarity and calm into our lives. It's about carefully considering what deserves our energy and what doesn't. It's about recognizing that our greatest strength lies not in a harsh or immediate reaction, but in remaining strong within, even when everything around us is turbulent. And that is one of the most valuable skills one can develop. Accepting reality is another important point. Have you ever felt like life is conspiring against you? As if everything is conspiring against you. You try to control everything, organize the details, do your best, and then something unexpected happens. Something is completely beyond your control. Without realizing it, you feel frustrated and helpless. It's as if you're writing a perfect script in your head and watching the whole world ignore it. But here's a truth many don't want to face. Life doesn't follow your instruction manual. No one is obligated to act the way you imagine, because everyone lives their own story with their own feelings and reasons. You're not directing this movie. You're just another character in it. If you've ever been annoyed because someone didn't react the way you wanted them to, or because something didn't go according to plan, then perhaps it's time to shift your perspective. Understanding that total control is an illusion not only lifts a huge weight from your shoulders, but also allows you to live a more carefree life. This is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Marcus Aurelius said that if something external bothers you, the problem isn't the thing itself, but your interpretation of it. In other words, it's not the event that hurts, but how you view it. When you let go of what you can't control and focus on your attitude, you'll find a peace that no one can take away from you. The secret lies in recognizing that what often bothers us most is precisely what we cannot change. Accepting that people aren't the way we'd like them to be is a way to avoid getting caught in an endless cycle of frustration. Others won't conform to our expectations, and no matter how hard we try, we can't mold them. So instead of wasting energy trying to force everyone into our worldview, it's best to accept the unchangeable. Everyone has their own rhythm and their own reasons, and when we understand that, everything becomes a little easier. Instead of focusing on what upsets you, there's a much healthier way to use your energy. The key is to direct your attention to what you can truly control, your attitude. No one can force you to carry an emotional burden because of someone else's actions. If, instead of dwelling on what's beyond your control, you choose to accept what's coming and move on, you'll find life becomes more bearable, because the only thing that ever truly depends on you is your reaction to it. The world keeps turning, but you can choose not to be swept away by it. Often other people's behavior bothers us because we don't understand their reality. Everyone has their own stories, fears, pain, and worries. So before you build walls or feel hurt by something that displeased you, remember that people don't always act with malicious intent. Everyone carries their own story and burdens, and often other people's behavior has nothing to do with us. When we see others as real people with fears and struggles we don't know, it's easier not to take everything personally. Life isn't without flaws, and nobody's perfect. People don't follow our expectations, and we don't follow theirs, but that doesn't mean we have to be constantly irritable. Accept what is unchangeable, change what is within your power, and go with the flow of life. Instead of wasting energy on what is beyond your control, live in the here and now. Ultimately, the secret lies in the peace that arises when we stop fighting the inevitable. As Marcus Aurelius reminded us in his meditations, the wind does not come of its own accord. It is you who learns to steer your boat. The difficulty in accepting change is one of the main reasons for our suffering. It's not so much the events themselves that hurt, but rather our refusal to acknowledge constant change. The mind clings to the familiar, to carefully crafted routines and plans. But life follows its own path without asking our permission. If we try to stop this natural course, we ignite an inner war. a pointless battle against what has already been decided, which only robs us of strength and inner peace. The trap of expectations is a particular form of this resistance. We imagine how things should be, how people should behave, what results we should achieve. But the world almost never corresponds to our expectations, and when reality proves to be different than anticipated, frustration arises. Learning to expect less from others and more from ourselves frees us from a cycle of disappointment and grants us greater inner freedom. The secret lies not in having no desires or pursuing no goals, but in understanding that life is unpredictable and nothing can be guaranteed. The imperfection of the world is another painful lesson. We strive for order and control, longing for a perfect life where everyone always acts optimally and our efforts always yield the expected results. But that's not how the world works. Not even the wisest or strongest can escape the natural chaos of existence. Accepting this doesn't mean giving up. It means recognizing that making mistakes and being surprised are part of life. When we understand this truth, we are able to adapt more intelligently and calmly, instead of wasting energy fighting the inevitable. Appreciating the present moment is one of the most effective ways to escape self-inflicted suffering. When we fight against reality, we become entangled in thoughts of what could have been or what should have been. This prevents us from seeing the now, the possibilities that present themselves to us in this moment. By focusing our attention on the present, we can live more freely without carrying the burden of the past or the fear of the future. What you tackle and don't accept won't let you go. Many people take a long time to grasp this truth. The more we fight against something we can't change, the more we suffer. When we accept things as they are, instead of trying to shape them the way we want them to be, we find freedom. Letting go of the need for control doesn't mean becoming inactive, but rather acting with clarity instead of anger. It's about learning to go with the flow instead of fighting against it. Accepting reality doesn't mean giving up. This confusion makes many people afraid of change. Accepting reality doesn't mean standing still, but rather recognizing the precise point from which we can act wisely. When we stop denying the obvious, we can react calmly and strategically instead of desperately. From this clarity, our decisions become better and our path easier. The idea that the world is always just is another obstacle that makes it difficult for us to accept life as it truly is. We grow up believing that good is always rewarded and evil punished, that everything should be balanced and right. But life doesn't follow these rules. We don't always get what we think we deserve, and people often don't behave as we expect. If we accept this, we gain maturity and are able to maintain our inner peace without being dependent on external influences. Peace is a conscious decision. It is not a matter of luck, but a daily choice. By learning to accept the meaning of life and to be aware each day that life is constantly changing and that our happiness cannot depend on something so fleeting, we can live more easily. This does not mean that we will never experience pain or disappointment, but rather that we learn not to get caught up in it, to let go of what is beyond our control, and to find meaning even in uncertainty. Seeing the world as it truly is, and not as we would like it to be, is an important step toward emotional maturity. Often we don't suffer from the events themselves, but because we insist that reality should conform to our expectations. We cling to rigid views about how relationships, work, or life itself should function, but life doesn't follow our wishes. The sooner we learn to view the world without filters or distortions, the easier it will be for us to find our way in it with a clear head and a peaceful heart. The wisdom of the Stoics offers us a valuable way to put all of this into practice in our daily lives. Stoic philosophy offers us a valuable way to put these teachings into practice in everyday life. The idea of the separation of powers, for example, shows how we can separate the changeable from the unchangeable and focus our attention solely on what is truly within our power. This frees us from the burden of trying to change something that was never in our hands anyway. It helps us to act consciously where we can make a difference and to gracefully let go of what is outside our control. Resistance to change is ultimately a struggle against the very nature of being. When we stop clinging to the past or to what we believe should have happened, we find greater inner peace and clarity. We realize that the greatest suffering lies not in the event itself, but in how we deal with it. By giving up this pointless fight, we let life take its course and see uncertainty not as a danger, but as an opportunity for further development. 14. Let go and move forward. Have you ever felt like your mind is trapped in endless anxieties about the future, as if you're imagining everything that could go wrong? It's as if your mind is wandering through a never-ending storm, jumping from one frightening thought to the next, leaving you no room to breathe. It's exhausting, isn't it? And the worst part is that these feared problems usually never materialize. Nevertheless, the anxiety and the constant "what if" thoughts continue to gnaw at you as if they were real. And here's an important truth. The future isn't in your hands, but how you deal with uncertainty is. Fear arises from the misconception that you can control a problem simply by thinking about it long enough. But in reality, worrying about something that doesn't even exist yet only robs you of joy and energy in the here and now. What's the point of worrying in advance about something that might not even happen? It's like going out every day with an open umbrella, even when the sun is shining brightly, just because it might rain. This doesn't mean ignoring dangers or acting recklessly, but rather recognizing that excessive worrying is pointless. It only leaves you living with pain that may never materialize. The secret lies in accepting the unknown and focusing only on what you can truly control, your own behavior and decisions in the here and now. When you let go of the urge to control everything, you free yourself from an unnecessary burden and find inner peace. So take a deep breath, let go, and trust that you will have the strength and clarity at the right time to deal with whatever comes your way. How do you do that? First of all, give your feelings space. If you're sad or angry, take a deep breath and acknowledge it. Understanding what you're feeling is the first step. Then do a short mental exercise. Imagine this feeling is like a ball in your hand. This ball represents hatred, resentment, or discomfort. Now consider this. Do you want to drop the ball and move on? Or would you rather hold on to it as if it were valuable? Often, simply letting go of the ball is enough to move forward without this unnecessary weight. And if you're thinking, but what if they never apologize? Remember, forgiveness is not for the other person, but for yourself. Forgiveness paves your own way, not someone else's. It's like cleaning your house. If you never dust, everything becomes oppressive. The same is true for feelings. So if someone hurts you or makes you nervous, remember that you are in control. You don't have to carry the pain around with you or replay the situation in your mind over and over. When you learn to let go without holding a grudge, you will experience a freedom that will surprise you. It is, of course, not easy, but as the Stoics would say, true peace arises when we accept what we cannot change and calmly decide how to respond to it. Don't wait for the other person to change so you can feel good. Change your perspective on the situation and free yourself from this emotional burden that is not yours. As my father always said, he who harbors resentment remains stuck in the same place. He who lets go strides lightly towards his own peace. 15. Ego rules. Have you ever felt like there's a stern judge living inside your head, never satisfied? Don't worry, many people feel the same way. This harsh voice is your ego, the director of a movie where everything revolves around you and every challenge becomes a huge drama. The problem is, this character not only annoys you but also robs you of your inner peace without you even realizing it. The ego is like a domineering leader who believes he is always right. He is offended when he doesn't receive the attention he believes he deserves and reacts as if every little thing were a great betrayal. Imagine someone takes a long time to reply to your message, or you're overlooked in a conversation. Suddenly, something simple and everyday becomes an internal conflict. Am I really unimportant? Such thoughts are nothing more than a wounded ego inventing reasons why you feel bad where there is no real reason. When the ego is in control, every word, gesture, or attitude of others appears as an attack. If someone disagrees with you, the ego interprets it as an insult. If someone points out a mistake, it transforms it into shame. It is a master at blowing small things out of proportion. The big problem, however, is that if you follow this inner voice, you will not only become increasingly angry, but you will also lose control of your emotions. The secret lies in recognizing this inner boss and taking away its power before it turns every day into a battle against everything and everyone. In short, ignore your ego. I know it sounds simple, but the biggest challenge is silencing that persistent voice that claims everything revolves around you. Don't react immediately, but pause for a moment. Take a deep breath. Ask yourself, is this really so bad that I'm losing my temper? Stoic philosophy teaches precisely this. We have no control over what happens outside of ourselves, but we can decide how we react to it. Instead of letting your ego grow, confront it. Tell yourself that you won't let this voice lead you to impulsive actions. The next time someone annoys you, wait a moment before reacting. Consider whether it will still matter in a month or a year. Most of our annoyances stem from such small things that, in retrospect, they make no sense at all. Another very effective strategy is empathy. Try to put yourself in the other person's shoes. Sometimes that stern look or strange remark wasn't directed at you at all, but was a sign that the person is also struggling with their own fears and worries. If you look at things from this perspective, you will find that your anger subsides and you gradually free yourself from the control of the ego. The ego, that hidden and often toxic boss, is just a passenger on your journey. But you are the one holding the steering wheel, and you don't have to let it take control. Practice serenity, think before you react, and never forget that not everything is a personal threat. Your ego only has power over your inner peace if you allow it. So when you feel anger rising, take a deep breath, remember the Stoic teachings, and tell your annoying boss to get lost. As Epictetus said, true power lies in controlling one's own feelings, not the feelings that the world tries to make one feel. If this content was helpful to you, we would appreciate a like, a subscription to our channel, and a comment. This helps YouTube recognize that such videos are useful for users like you and allows us to create similar content in the future.